What is up, Pacer Nation? Welcome to the Pacer Pulse podcast, the heartbeat of Indiana basketball. And today, I wanted to cover three of our young guys where I want to assess where their progress has been throughout this season and just evaluate how they've been doing. And I think these three guys are some of the most important young guys on the team that we really need to get answers on and really need to see where they fit into this team's future. And I'm leaving out some of the bigger names, but I'm going to focus on Jarace Walker, Ben Sheppard, and Johnny Furphy in this episode. And I really want to evaluate how they've been here recently. So I looked up their stats, each of them for the last 15 games, the last 5 games, and I just wanted to see how they're playing as of late because as we all know, Jarace started off the year very rough, and the same with Ben Sheppard. Nothing to even write home about with those guys, and I just want to see look at the numbers and see how they've been playing lately, if their play has improved, and if they are kind of foundational pieces to our rotation or not, or if I'm going to give my insight on that too and let you guys know what I think, and how Furphy's kind of been since he's been back from his injury. I know he had a lot of injuries early on. Sheppard had that little stint of being hurt as well, of course. So I get all my stats from StatMuse during this as well, so you can look it up too after I cover each guy. But the first one I'll start off with is Jarace Walker, and the most polarizing one, of course, out of this bunch, because obviously we all know Pacer Nation, we drafted him 8th overall, and we have high hopes for that. I mean, anytime you get a guy in the top 14 in the lottery, you have high hopes for a guy to be at least a rotation player for you. I mean, obviously, you always hope for a lot more, like a high starter or a high-level starter in this league. And if you look through the past drafts, honestly, you're not really going to see that very often with the 8th pick. A lot of times, a lot of these guys, even in the lottery, aren't even in the league in the next 5 years after they were drafted. So it's pretty shocking whenever you go back and look at a lot of these past drafts and see if these guys are even in the NBA still, or it's pretty shocking, some of the names, and you'll remember them and be like, oh yeah, I forgot about that guy. At least that happened to me a lot. But to start with Jarace here, we all hope to see. So I know when he came out of the draft, right? We all expected this defensive menace at the 4 that could guard multiple positions, 1 through 5 almost, I would say, or at least 3 or 4 different positions that could have that switchability on the defensive end. And we actually didn't really project him to be much of an offensive threat. So it's kind of been the inverse of his career so far, where he hasn't really shown those defensive tools like we thought he would have coming out of college. And his offensive game has been vastly improved from what we thought it was going to be coming out of college. So it's kind of been a weird case for Jarace. And he hasn't had the same opportunities, I would say, as a lot of his other peers in his draft have had, in terms of being able to play and have that opportunity to make mistakes and grow from those mistakes. I mean, we know that that's not really something that Rick, I would say, is really keen on letting young guys go through. And I'm not just saying that as me just coming up with that in the top of my head. That's kind of been known to be Rick Carlisle's forte. He's very strict with younger players, and we've seen that with Ben Mathurin too. And it really just depends, of course, I guess, because I really do think he favors the guys that have played for longer years in college. Andrew Nembhard was the same way, Ben Sheppard, and we've seen those guys kind of been favored. And I think Furphy is kind of one of those few examples where he does trust the younger guy a little more than we're used to seeing. So I think it's just he looks for certain things in players, and maybe that's just playing hard, playing to not making too many mistakes and different things like that. So we know Jarace kind of struggles with that. We know Jarace kind of makes some boneheaded passes, but his highs of his passes are phenomenal. It's almost like unheard of vision that you don't really see too often in the NBA. And that's what's so polarizing with Jarace too, is when you see his best of his best, you get so mesmerized by it because you see what his potential could be. And I'm not trying to talk about this guy as an all-star, don't get me wrong. But I am talking about a guy that can impact the defensive end in so many different ways and also be that connector on the floor that we kind of hope to see from a lot of our guys and how our system's played. And the shooter that he's been consistently throughout his career so far, I know it's not been tremendously high volume, but he's been a 40% three-point shooter. for pretty much most of his career, which nobody would have predicted coming out of college. I mean, I think that was the one thing where we were like, is he going to be able to shoot the ball? And that's kind of been the case. Like, he's been able to shoot from three, which is pretty odd. I mean, I know the beginning of this year has been the opposite, but I'm going to go over the numbers as to why that it's trending at least in an upward trajectory, at least for Walker, and it's been awesome to see in that front. But like I said, I want to assess how these guys have been this year so far, since we're getting close to the halfway point. So I think it's a pretty fair assessment to look at and see. So with Walker, as we know, struggled early on in this year, couldn't hit any shots. I mean, he's still pretty bad from inside the three-point line. And we know it's because he's so afraid of contact. And then you see some of those plays every now and then where I forget which game it was, so I'm not going to even try to pinpoint which game it was. But he had that drive where he had a left-handed dunk recently in the lane where it was just like an emphatic dunk with authority. And you see that and you're like, this is what we want out of Jarace. We want to see him have those drives where he's just like a freight train going inside, but it's controlled. It's not like out of control. Like, this was like controlled freight train going inside, finishing with authority. Something that we know he has in him. I mean, he has the size. He's 6'7", 6'8", like 250 plus. Like, the dude has the strength. But too many times he goes up and tries to avoid contact and avoids getting contact at the rim, where he needs to embrace that more. He has the strength where he could finish inside more if he just leans into that contact and doesn't try to do too many floaters or fadeaways where he's trying to avoid the contact. It's pretty much clear as day that he's trying to do that a lot of times. So I wanted to go over the last 15 games he's had, or the stats he's been averaging the last 15 games, because I think that's a decent sample size compared to how he really started off this season, to see if he's really trending in the right direction. So the last 15 games, he's been averaging 18 minutes in the last 15 games, and he's averaging 7.5 points per game. And he's averaging 3 rebounds a game, 1.5 assists. So I guess in 18 minutes, that's not awful. Not great stats, of course, but I would say it's an improvement from what we were seeing in the beginning of the year, even if he was getting more minutes to start off the year. Almost a steal per game. So he's shooting 39.4% from the field in the last 15 games, which is pretty awful. I mean, when you're 6'7", 6'8", with that kind of strength that you could just play with and finish inside with, and that you're shooting 40%, or you're shooting less than 40% from the field, that's not a good number, guys. That's not encouraging at all. And to see that number not really improve one bit, I mean, I know he was shooting probably 32% from the field at one point, so it has gone up. I mean, that's just a guess. I'm just guessing if that's what he was shooting to begin this year. It was very low. Let's just say that. So if we're taking it glass half full, okay, it's an improvement, but still pretty bad for a guy of his size and stature to not finish at least 40% from the field. That's kind of alarming still. But the one encouraging thing is he is shooting 40% from three in his last 15 games. So if you've been watching the games, you've seen that, all right, he is starting to knock down his three ball at least at a very high rate. And that's at least encouraging. So you want to see that. And that's kind of trickling back towards what his season, or his career averages have been, closer to 40%. So you at least want to see that, but you also want to see that field goal percentage really get bumped up, because I mean, it's never a good sign when a guy's a better three-point shooter than he is finishing inside, to me. I just think that's not really a high-quality rotation guy, in my opinion. When a guy shoots higher from three than he does inside, I mean, I know the three ball is very important in the NBA nowadays, but I don't know. To me, that's just not a good sign. And I'm happy for the three ball, but yeah, he's got to finish more inside. He's shooting 75% from the free throw line, at least, through those last 15 games, but he's only shooting one attempt a game. So in 18 minutes, I mean, that's not very good at all. I mean, I don't know if you want to count 18 minutes as being a big sample size, but he's not getting to the line at all. And that just goes back to my point of what I was saying. He avoids a lot of contact. And a guy that's 6'7", 6'8", 250 plus, he should be embracing that completely. So that's pretty alarming still. And then his total points have been 112 points in that amount of time. Nothing crazy. Like I said, it averages out to be 7.5 points per game if you look at it on that front. But then this is a big number here. His plus minus in those games, I don't know if that's counting for combined or just what his impact has been over those 15 games. And his plus minus in that time frame has been negative 49. So that is horrendous. That's pretty bad. And over a 15 game span, you're not really seeing anything great out of Jarace in that. He's not impacting winning. And I would say that involves like his defense has been too up or down, and his overall like impact in terms of taking care of the ball is not pretty, and it's just not a good look. So if we're taking it in 15 game sample sizes, pretty bad stretch. At least you're seeing the three ball go up, but other than that, you're not really seeing much improvement in much of any other areas. But I am going to shout him out again for his last game against who did we play last? Wow, I'm spacing the Heat. Sorry, forgot who we played already. But against the Heat, he had one of his best all around games of the season in terms of defensive ability and just rebounding, scoring. One of his most complete games. So I'm going to give him props, but it's one game. So I'm trying to put this into perspective, guys, and not get too caught into, oh, like he had this amazing game. I'm trying to keep it in check. So when I go to the last 5 games, right? So I think that's enough to kind of see somewhat of a trend. I think 15 games is more of a bigger trend that's like sticking. But I just want to see like in a smaller sample size what he's done in the last 5 games. So he's averaging 17 and a half minutes in the last 5 games per game. And he's averaging 8.4 points, so pretty close to what he's averaging in the last 15. 2 assists, 1 steal, so at least up on the steals, 3 rebounds, a little up on that. And he is shooting better from the field the last 5 games. He's shooting 46.7% from the field. So that's a great trend, of course, what I was saying. If you're shooting, I mean, this trend is a little still on par with what I'm about to say, but in a good way. But he is improved. He was shooting 40% from the field the last 15, so at least he's up to like 46.7 in the last 5. So that's something I'm going to keep an eye on to see if he can continue in that upward trajectory and see if he can get that overall field goal percentage up still. But it's at least encouraging to see it's improving. And his 3 ball, he's been at 60% in the last 5 games. So obviously we know that's unsustainable, but that's in 3 attempts per game. So he's hitting close to 2 of his 3 attempts per game. And we know that's not sustainable, but still, it's at least like encouraging to see that his 3 ball is maintaining. It's not falling off. And let's hope it's a trend that continues. So I don't know if you balance that out between the last 20 games, maybe that's closer to like 45% from 3. So that's awesome to see. So at least his 3 ball is still improving and it's sticking around. So that's encouraging to me that it's maybe like the beginning of the year is more of like a fluke within terms of how bad his 3-point shot was. But it's his inside game that's concerning. And then in the last 5 games, he's at least been a positive on the court. He's a plus 13. So I like looking at that too to see what his overall impact is. So at least in the last 5 games, he has been playing more impact basketball. And this gets me into my next thing I want to kind of discuss with Jarace is, if you've seen like my other podcasts lately, especially my trade ones, I pretty much include him in just about any trade package that we have for a starting center. And I would say even after looking at these numbers, evaluating how he's been so far halfway into the season, I still think he's a prime candidate to get moved at the deadline. And I don't think any of this recent play really convinces me that he's going to be able to like really put this all together for our team, at least what we're expecting out of a rotation guy. I do think he still has a good high ceiling, and we see that from time to time, especially like against the Heat. That's why I want to sing his praises, because of that game that he had there where he led the team in plus minus that game. But I still think that hopefully with his elevated play, and this is just in my thinking, I hope it's at least increasing his trade value some, where people are seeing like, hey, the last 20 games or so, because they're looking at these numbers too. Like if they're going to trade for a guy, they're looking at these numbers. So they're going to see, hey, we're seeing that he's at least shooting from 3-point line better. Maybe the beginning of the year was a fluke. If he can continue to improve from the field, and they're seeing like his overall impact has at least been positive lately, I still think it's something that you want to see as a Pacer fan, even if you hope to keep him or hope to see him traded to get a starting center. And that still is my hope. I still think that all in all, I think Jarace is going to be a guy that we see gets traded. But it's at least encouraging to see him continue to grow, at least in some elements of his game. But we're still seeing the sloppy turnovers. We're still seeing the lackadaisical defense at times, lack of effort at times. When he's locked in against like the Miami Heat, I mean, you can't complain about much because he had a great all-around game, but you don't see that often. And that's honestly probably the only game we've seen like that all season. So I'm kind of I'm trying to keep it in perspective here, guys, where it's like, all right, yes, we've seen the improvements, at least in the last 20 games where he's shooting better. But all in all, his impact hasn't been where you want it to be this season. I do think he's still a prime candidate to be traded. So let me know what you guys think differently in the YouTube comments. If you watch on YouTube, let me know what you think. But I don't know, guys. I still think he's somebody that we trade at the deadline. I know he's been at least shooting better, and I think that's something you can at least use to help other teams be encouraged by as like a selling point. Like, hey, he's shooting 40% from three in like the last 20 games, and maybe you can tap into some more potential on your team where you can allow more developmental time and for him to make mistakes, and maybe it's just not a right fit for our team too. But so that's my Jarace Walker take. So now I'm going to get on to Ben Sheppard here. So we know Ben Sheppard has just came back from that injury. So I don't know how they factor in these stats too, if they count those or they just count the last 15 he's played. So I'm going to assume they count just the last 15 he's played, of course. So last 15 games for Ben Sheppard. He is averaging 6.8 points per game in about 23 minutes, so obviously more minutes than Walker. And he's averaging 3 rebounds, 2 assists, so pretty decent numbers. I mean, you're not expecting crazy numbers from Sheppard in that regard. So he is shooting 46.2% from the field, which is encouraging. And as we've seen from Sheppard this year, he's really shown the ability to like drive to the hoop a lot more and do more things off the dribble. He's had a few games here and there where he's shown like some off the dribble shooting from the mid range too. That he's hit some shots from there. I mean, obviously not a tremendous amount, but he's had a few games here and there throughout this season where he's hit those, and I'm like, wow, okay. Ben Sheppard has a little bit more in his bag than I thought he would. And I'm not saying that's stuff you really want him to see, like want to see him do, because I think ultimately his NBA fate is just a 3-and-D guy who has a kind of like a nose for the ball, can get some rebounds, get some hustle plays for you, but that's where his bread and butter is going to be in the NBA, is just knocking down threes and playing defense. So he does add a little bit of rebounding at least, so that's encouraging to see. And like I said, at least he's finishing some shots inside, and he's shown that ability to kind of get to the rim. You would rather see that from a guy than not see it. So, but then this is like the other encouraging thing. What I was saying, like his real value is going to be from a 3-point line. The last 15 games for Ben Sheppard, he is shooting 42% from the three. So awesome, awesome sign. That's what you hope to see. And if you've been watching the games, you've seen him actually starting to like get his shots to go a little bit more frequently. And that's off 3 attempts per game. So I don't know. Maybe you want to see that at 5, but he is playing like 23 minutes a game. So I don't know how many shots you really want to see him put up. If you can get that maybe 4 to 5, I would like to see that. But all in all, great shooting in the last 15 games from Sheppard, 42%. Definitely a huge improvement from what he was at the first half of this season. I mean, my goodness, just could not throw the ball in the ocean. I think he was actually statistically one of the worst shooters in the NBA for a long period of time. I don't know what that is now. I can't imagine that's the case. I need to look up his like stats on the season so far, but I was just very interested in like what it's been recently. But definitely an improvement. And he's shooting like 81.8% from the free throw line, but you can basically not count that. It's less than 1 free throw attempt per game. So he's not getting to the line, but we know that's not really Sheppard's game. But in the last 15 games, this is where he differs from Walker here. And why he's been playing more than Walker, of course, is he's a plus 23 in those last 15 games. So clearly has an impact on the game in a positive way. We know that Sheppard's defense has always been, it's kind of a mixed bag to me personally. I think his defense is kind of overhyped at times, but I do think he hustles out there. He plays hard, and I do think like he does play good defense more often than probably not. But I do think also that it depends on the matchup. I mean, he's not good on quicker guards, and he's not good on like bigger wings, of course. So it really just depends like on the matchup for him. It's very matchup dependent, but all in all, like I said, if he could just be that 3-and-D presence, that's really all you're asking for from Ben Sheppard. And I think developmental wise, you hope that he can still be like a 10-man rotation guy, maybe. So like, I know in the playoffs we tend to play even more guys than what what normally is accustomed to like teams playing. I mean, I know that like in the playoffs, usually you're expecting to play just 8 guys when it's really comes down to the nitty gritty, like kind of what we saw in the finals a little bit. And is Sheppard one of those guys? Probably not. I think he's more of like a 9th guy, but I still would probably put him over Walker in terms of who I trust. But I mean, obviously Walker has a higher upside, but if we're talking about guys that we want to play just in terms of who's going to impact winning more, it's definitely going to be Ben Sheppard. So I'm not trying to like put those guys against each other. It's just they both had different games and they both kind of played different positions. But all in all, Ben Sheppard's been the more impactful player in terms of winning. So I'm going to go into like the last 5 games for Ben Sheppard. So to keep it fair between everybody. So Sheppard last 5 games, averaging 6.4 points per game, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, almost a steal at like 0.8 steals per game. He's shooting 50% from the field, so that's awesome to see. It's been going up because he was at 46 or so from the field at the last 15. And then this is what's been really encouraging too. The last 5 games, he's at 61.5% from 3. So he's shooting 2.6 per game, hitting 1.6. So really, I mean, what? He's hitting like a 1.5 threes per game, I guess, in that span, but not high volume, but at least he's still hitting it at a high clip. So at least he's keeping the defenses honest. And maybe they don't respect him fully yet from 3. I still think there's times where he's left open because teams are like, hey, if we'll give up a Ben Sheppard 3. We're not really worried about that. But at least if he helps space the floor and maybe keeps teams honest a little bit, that's all you really want out of Sheppard. So great to see that his shooting is still like maintaining and even improving since the last 5 games. And then his plus minus has not been so great in the last 5 games. It's been negative 28. So I know it's like a little confusing because the last 15 he's been a positive 23. So maybe take that difference a little bit. I don't know how you would math that out. I'm not a mathematician, honestly, guys. But in the last 5 games, it has been pretty for Sheppard. And I think we've kind of seen that. Like his minutes haven't really been there as much in the last 5. I mean, I know I said what? Well, he's playing 21 still. So technically, I guess like we still trust him in that regard, but he still hasn't been as impactful. But I'm going to take the 15 game sample size over the last 5 over that. But I just think it's interesting to see. And it paints like trends that you see of which guys are getting the minutes and who's not. And like I said, with Ben Sheppard, I even think he's a guy, am I going to say is a keeper? Probably not. I mean, I still see Sheppard as like a trade chip guy, even if he has much value at all. Maybe he doesn't, but it is getting close to where these guys, we're going to have to like really think about their contract situations. Are we going to want to re-sign these guys? I think Sheppard, his contract's going to go up maybe next year. I don't know for sure, or at least in the next couple years, obviously. And the same with Walker. So it's going to really come down to, are we going to want to pay these guys? I mean, are we going to want to extend Sheppard to like a $10 million per year or $10 million per year deal? I don't know. I don't know about that one, guys. Especially once we get closer to the tax line. If we're going to keep Matherin, possibly, we don't know about that still. That's going to get us closer to paying the tax, of course. And then if we want to get a starting center. So those are things to consider. But in my personal opinion, I do think that Sheppard, he's still expendable in my opinion. And have we seen improvement this year? No, not really. I mean, I would say that from Walker and Sheppard both, we haven't really seen much growth in their games. They've kind of been the same. And I know it's been a wonky year, so it's hard to really evaluate these guys in terms of if they are making in progress or if they aren't. But then again, this is where my argument's going to be for this next guy, Johnny Furphy. He's shown improvement. And I know, like, because Furphy didn't really play at all last year, so obviously he's going to show improvement from what we've seen last year to now. So, but like Walker's kind of been the same case. I mean, obviously he played more than Furphy, but I don't know. I don't know, guys. I don't really know how to evaluate it. I'm just trying to go off these numbers because it's kind of fun for me to see. But, so I'm going to get into Johnny Furphy next, okay? So the last 15 games for Johnny Furphy. And if you've been watching these games, sorry, before I get into this, if you've been watching the games, you've seen like Furphy's confidence grow and grow as the games go on. I mean, he's had highlight dunks each game. He's getting out in transition. His 3 ball is looking more and more confident here lately, especially. And if you watch the games, you see where he's not really thinking as much as he was at first. Whenever he first came back from that injury he sustained again, where he started to get more consistent minutes and playing time. You see him being more decisive. You don't see him hesitating as much, especially last game I noticed where he's just letting the ball fly. I mean, from 3, and you hear from Chris and Quinn quite often, I think, on the broadcast where they're like, he's been working so hard on his 3 ball to improve from a 3. And you can see that work being put in, and he's starting to get him to fall finally. And I just think that, I think he's going to continue to grow in his confidence throughout the year. We already know Rick Carlisle loves Furphy, and rightfully so. I mean, Furphy's definitely, I think, a crowd favorite, in my opinion. I mean, the guy, I'm a big fan of Furphy, too. I'm a fan of what his potential could be. I mean, he's 6'9", maybe even 6'10", maybe he's still growing. I don't know. But he's definitely got a lot of size, and he moves his feet well. And you see that in these games, too, where Furphy's able to move his feet, stay in front of guys, and obviously, he's going to have his issues with certain matchups, of course. I mean, on quicker guards or whoever, but I think Furphy does show the ability to maybe guard three different positions, 3 to 4. Maybe I'm a little high on that, but I do think he'd be able to hold his own in that regard. And we've seen him play solid defense, and we know he can crash the glass. He's got a nose for the ball. He doesn't make too many mistakes, and I've even liked what I've seen with his passes in transition lately too, where he'll get a rebound, he'll dribble out in transition, and he'll pass it to a guy on the fast break. I've seen him do that with Sheppard. I don't know if it was last game or the game before, but I've been keeping him keep your eye on that if you're watching the games where he's kind of able to get the ball out in transition a little more, and that's huge. That's huge for keeping pace and the way we like to play, and I think that's really aided in that. And of course, we know what Furphy is in transition. I mean, he's a highlight reel. If he gets the ball, he's gonna dunk the ball, and he's Obi Toppin-esque in that regard, where he's gonna electrify the crowd in that aspect too. And he's just so athletic. So you see what Furphy can be, like a high-level 3-and-D guy at his peak who can rebound the ball, make little mistakes. He's getting better off the dribble, too, in terms of getting into the paint. He's never going to be a mid-range shooter, in my opinion, off the dribble. Let's go ahead and just probably cancel that out. I mean, I don't want to count it out fully, but we're probably never going to see that from Furphy, but that's okay. He can drive to the hoop, finish inside, shoot from 3, get out in transition, defend. That's what you want out of a role player. And I think he could be potentially, I think Furphy could be a top 8 guy in a rotation for a playoff team. I do see that out of him. And maybe even a fill-in starter from time to time. So I'm not going to cap his ceiling. And maybe I'm just super high on Furphy. I don't know. But, okay, let me get back to this. Sorry, I went on my little tangent there. But so last 15 games, Johnny Furphy is averaging 6 points per game, 6.3. So he's averaging 17 minutes a game. And he's averaging 4 rebounds, which is a big number for that amount of time. 17 minutes, 4 rebounds, that's huge. Almost 1 assist, about half a steal. But he is shooting 54% from the field, and he's shooting 34.4% from 3. So that's a pretty huge improvement, I would say, from Furphy with his 3-ball. At least league average. You want to see it higher, of course, but the fact that he's at least league average from 3 right now is very encouraging in the last 15 games. And, of course, the 54% from the field is a huge number. And we know that he's a pretty good finisher inside, and he's added a lot of strength in his game, and I think he's going to fill out even more as he progresses throughout his career. That's only going to help him more, add to his versatility too, because we saw last game where offensively we played Furphy at the 5, and we saw how good we looked last game, and I think it's something we're going to be able to tap into, this little bit of small ball lineups against certain teams and against certain matchups, because we saw that last year in the playoffs, guys, with Obi Toppin played a lot of crucial minutes over Miles Turner in the playoffs in crunch time, because that's was some of our best lineups. So adding another guy that potentially play that kind of role in Furphy, that could be huge, guys, especially at $2 million per year in the next 4 years. We got to find cheap contracts and guys that can contribute on those type of deals. So that's pretty huge too. So keep an eye on that. And I also have been hammering this home. Keep an eye on Furphy playing more minutes than Walker and Sheppard, or just Walker specifically. He's trending in that direction, guys. If you haven't watched the games, I know last game Walker played more than Furphy, but rightfully so. But even Johnny had a great game last game too. But Walker definitely deserved more minutes last game than Furphy. But like I said, the trend has been Furphy's been playing more than Walker even. So keep an eye on that. But the last 15 games, he's kind of been like Walker in terms of overall impact. He's a negative 43 plus minus in the last 15 games. So pretty bad impact overall, but I think that's still counting probably some of those games. I don't know how many games he's played since he's been back from injury, because he did have a rough go at once he started kind of coming back and getting reacclimated with the team. But so maybe I'm going to factor in that's kind of part of the case. But overall, negative 43, not great, not what you want to see, but for a guy that's finally getting some real minutes in the NBA, you can kind of give some leeway with that, I will say. So I'm trying to be fair with all these guys too. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it with one guy and not the other. So I know Walker's getting like real primetime minutes too, but he's gotten more playing time than Furphy. That's why I give Furphy a little bit more of a rope. So going into like the last 5 games for Furphy, he's averaging 7 points per game, and he's upped his minutes. So he's up to 20.9 minutes, 20.9 minutes, yes, in the last 5 games. He's averaging 6 rebounds, so 7.6 rebounds. That's a pretty big number for a wing. So that he's a very good rebounding wing in that regard, averaging like 1.5 assists, so pretty decent number for a guy that doesn't create off the dribble or he just keeps the ball moving. So that's a good number to see. He's shooting 52% from the field, so still a very high number. And this is what's even more encouraging. He's shooting 38.5% from 3 in the last 5 games, guys. He's hitting 1 3 per game out of like 2.6 attempts, so not high volume. So you hope to see that increase as time goes on. But very encouraging sign from Furphy to see that 3-ball continue to improve. And that's something I'm going to try to monitor as the season goes on. Maybe in like another 15-game increments, I'll do something like this too, where I reevaluate what it's been since I've talked about it on this podcast and see if he's still improving in that regard. It's going to be very interesting to see and keep track of. So I'm very interested in doing this sort of thing. And then his plus minus in the last 5 games has been -2. So obviously not a huge impact, but he's not been awful. He's been just about even. So you're not losing the minutes he's on. I mean, maybe just a little bit per se, but it's not by a lot. It's not by a drastic margin. So I would say all in all, it's been an improvement for Furphy. And that's why like I was leading off with this saying that if we can get Furphy to like his max potential where he's a high level 3-and-D guy on the wing at a size that you really need on this roster. We need guys that are 6'9", can be versatile defenders, maybe guard 3 or 4 different positions, and can shoot from 3, be a highlight reel in transition. I mean, you can see why the front office was very, very high on Furphy and why he was considered the steal of the draft in that year because he fell to the second round, which is just a steal. And I think he's only going to be even better once Tyrese comes back next year, guys. So I think factoring that in too, I think he's going to be a big piece moving forward. I do. And that's why I do think that Walker's a bit more expendable now because I do think Furphy just provides more of what your team needs or what he just fits the system more. And I know we say that about Mathurin a lot too, but Mathurin is obviously clearly a better player than Walker in terms of what he provides at like an elite level with his scoring, with his shooting is just as good as Walker's. I don't know. So I just think obviously that's not even comparable, but like I said, I just think Walker's more expendable in that regard. And I think that's what the front office is seeing too, where they're like, we see Furphy kind of doing the things that we want to see. He's not making mistakes. He's rebounding ball. He's playing hard. Even Rick Carlisle said that in one of the post games the other day. Like, he loves how hard Furphy plays. And we've already seen that with Sheppard too. That's why he plays a lot too, because he plays hard, guys. So we see what Rick really values. Whether I believe that's the right approach or not, I do think at some point, like, you got to develop high talented guys like you do. I mean, I get it. We've made the most out of like the Nimhards or like some of these second round guys, whatever. But talent wins in this league, guys. I mean, we've seen it with the Thunder. I know we pushed them to Game 7 and we're so close, but I know we're going to get a top 3 pick or hopefully a top 4 pick. And is Rick going to play a guy like that? I mean, obviously, like, he's going to have to. Like, he's going to be forced to play that guy because you don't just not play a top 4 pick. So that's going to be very interesting to see. So adding that element too, where we're going to bring another guy like that in, whatever we decide with Mathurin, I just see Walker and Sheppard being more expendable guys. And another guy I hope to cover here as the season progresses is Cam Jones. And I've always kind of seen like maybe Cam Jones could be possibly a fill-in or replacement for Sheppard possibly. I know Sheppard's a little bigger, of course, but Sheppard's really mostly just a straight 2, in my opinion. Cam can kind of play the 1 and 2, so he's got more versatility in that regard, and Cam's shown some ability to play defense. I know I've kept this podcast mostly about those guys, but I want to see Cam Jones play more minutes and see what he brings. So I've said this in past podcasts before where I'm like, all right, I could see Furphy and Cam kind of possibly replacing Jarace and Sheppard. So you may disagree with me on that, and I could firmly respect that because Cam hasn't earned that in terms of like playing time and all that just yet and Rick's trust. But Rick did say one game after a post game that good things tend to happen when Cam Jones is on the court from what he's seen. So I know that hasn't translated to more minutes yet, but I know at this point we're still trying to win games, I guess, but I think we're going to start seeing where TJ starts to sit more games as we start to see that, hey, this is a lost season, even though I think it is already. That Cam Jones is going to get more playing time in that regard. We're going to see what he has because these contracts matter too, guys. Cam Jones isn't on even a guaranteed deal, and we could probably sign him for cheaper than what Sheppard will be because he'll be up for a contract extension soon. Same with Walker. So that does factor into things. So, and with this new CBA, the cheaper contracts, guys that can outperform their contracts is going to mean a lot. So I think it's like something to keep an eye on, guys. But all in all, I wanted to see how these guys have been doing since the start of the year, the last 15 games, the last 5. Really see like how they've been trending, and kind of give my viewpoint on if these guys are kind of like keepers in our rotation, what we see out of these guys, if they're expendable. And like I said, my final take, guys, is I still think Walker and Sheppard are trade candidates, and I think Furphy has kind of surpassed them in my opinion. And I know it's too early to probably say, but I just think from what Furphy has seen so far, what Rick has really kind of vocalized and how much he likes Furphy, I think it's pretty much, I don't know, I don't want to say set in stone, but I think he's above Walker and Sheppard. I really do. And I think it makes Walker and Sheppard more expendable. And I would keep an eye out for that, guys, as we try to look for a starting center. What happens in this next month? We don't have much time left till the trade deadline. I think it's a month away, less than a month now. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And let me know what you guys think in the YouTube comments. I would always love a like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. And let me know your guys' thoughts and opinions. I would always love to talk about Pacer basketball with you guys. And please follow the listening platforms too. It really helps the podcast grow as well. I'm on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and always, if you guys can, at the kindness of your hearts, give a 5-star review. I would always appreciate it. And I always just say, guys, I'm just a fan like y'all, trying to come on here, bring more content, and just a platform for us fans to really talk and converse and really share our opinions and just show our love for the Pacers. That's what it's all about, guys. So you can please give a like, comment, subscribe on YouTube, 5-star review. I really appreciate it on the listening platforms as well. So I'm going to do a game recap over the Boston Celtics game tonight. So hopefully that goes well. We're on a 2-game win streak, so let's hope we can keep that momentum going. And maybe I'll do another episode tomorrow. I'll have to see what kind of topics I can really get into. But I really appreciate you guys listening, Pacer Nation, and I will talk to you soon.